He is a two-time UFC heavyweight champion. He holds the record for the most title defenses the division has ever seen, and ask most experts who the greatest heavyweight in the history of the promotion is, and they will give you his name without hesitation. He knocked out some of the most dangerous human beings on the planet. And then, on his days off from being one of the scariest men alive, he put on a completely different uniform and went to work pulling people out of car wrecks and burning buildings. While other champions were buying mansions and fleets of supercars, Stipe Miocic kept clocking in at a fire station in Ohio. This is the story of how the greatest heavyweight in UFC history stayed a blue-collar guy from Cleveland, and why he is worth a tiny fraction of what you would expect. It starts in Euclid, Ohio. Stipe Miocic was born on the 19th of August, 1982, in Euclid, just outside Cleveland, the son of Croatian immigrants. His parents split when he was young, and he was raised largely by his mother and grandparents in a hard-working, no-frills corner of the American Midwest. And from an early age, it was obvious the kid was a natural athlete, not in one sport, but in almost all of them. He wrestled at the Division I level in college. He played college baseball well enough that Major League scouts took notice, and he was a Golden Gloves boxing champion on top of it. Stipe Miocic was, simply put, built to compete. But here is the part that makes his story different from almost every other fighter you will ever hear about. Before he was ever a professional athlete, Miocic became a firefighter and a paramedic. He studied for it, earned his certifications, and took a real job serving his community back home in Ohio. Fighting was not his escape from poverty or his only option in life. It was something he chose, on top of a career that already meant something. He wandered into a gym around 2005, discovered he could hit harder than almost anyone, and turned professional in 2010. Once he got to the UFC, he climbed the heavyweight ladder with a mix of heavy hands and relentless cardio, an unusual combination for a big man. In 2016, he traveled to Brazil and knocked out Fabricio Werdum to win the UFC Heavyweight Championship. And then he did something no heavyweight in the company's history had ever managed. He defended that belt 3 times in a row, beating a murderer's row of contenders one after another. To this day, that remains the longest streak of heavyweight title defenses the UFC has ever seen. He also holds the record for the most heavyweight title fight wins and the most fight night bonuses in the division. By any measure, he was rewriting the record book. Then came the rivalry that defined an era. Stipe and Daniel Cormier, 2 of the greatest to ever do it, fought 3 brutal times. Cormier knocked him out and took his belt. Stipe roared back and reclaimed it. And in the deciding 3rd fight, he won again to settle it for good. It is remembered as one of the finest trilogies in the history of the sport, and it cemented Miocic as the standard every heavyweight would be measured against. But here is the twist that makes people fall in love with him. Through all of it, the entire time he was the baddest heavyweight on the planet, he never quit his day job. Stipe Miocic kept working as a firefighter and paramedic in Ohio. The literal heavyweight champion of the world would finish a training camp, defend his title in front of millions, and then go right back to the station, sit around the kitchen table with his crew, and answer emergency calls. He spent well over a decade with the department. And when he finally went full-time in the fire service in 2022, the reason he gave was maybe the most down-to-earth thing a champion has ever said. He did it for the long-term health insurance and security for his family. If you are enjoying this story of the most grounded champion in combat sports, take a second to subscribe. We break down the real lives, the money, and the legacies behind the biggest names in fighting every single week. So let us talk about the money, because it is genuinely surprising. For a two-time champion who many call the greatest heavyweight of all time, Stipe Miocic's net worth is estimated at only around $4 million. Let that sink in. Fighters with a fraction of his accomplishments have flashed far bigger fortunes. But Miocic never chased that life. There was no mansion in Las Vegas, no garage full of exotic cars. He drove a pickup truck he was proud of, invested in a local Ohio pizza business, and stayed exactly where he came from. He measured his life by his work and his family, not by how loud he could flex. In a sport that runs on ego and spectacle, he was almost defiantly ordinary. And this is how you have to understand the idea of an empire when it comes to Stipe Miocic. He does not own a city. He does not own a chain of companies stretching across the map. What he built cannot be counted in dollars at all. He earned the respect of an entire sport, while quietly running toward the fires everyone else runs away from. His empire is not property or wealth. It is a legacy of service, the rarest kind of greatness there is, the kind that never asks for a spotlight. Of course, every great career eventually meets its ending, and his was a hard one. In 2021, Miocic lost his title to the ferocious puncher Francis Ngannou. Then came a long layoff, years out of the cage, before one final shot at glory. In November of 2024, at 42 years old, he stepped into Madison Square Garden to face John Jones for the heavyweight title, chasing history as a three-time champion. It did not go his way. Jones stopped him, and afterward, Miocic announced his retirement. There was no fairy tale ending. He reflected that he had started out fighting in bowling alleys and finished on the biggest stage in the sport, and he simply hoped he had made his family and the city of Cleveland proud. So step back and look at the whole picture. The greatest heavyweight the UFC has ever produced, a two-time champion who broke records that still stand, walked away from the sport and went right back to the fire station, back to his family, back to the ordinary life he never actually left. Plenty of fighters win belts. Almost none of them stay this humble, this rooted, this real through all of it. Whether or not he ever got that third title, that part of his story was won a long time ago. So here is the thought worth sitting with. Years from now, when people tell the story of Stipe Miocic, will they remember the belts and the records? Or will they remember the heavyweight champion of the world who spent his days off saving lives at a firehouse in Ohio? Drop your take in the comments. We genuinely want to hear it. And if you want more real stories from the world of fighting, the legends, the heart, and the legacies behind the biggest names, hit subscribe and stick around. We have a new one for you every single week.